Imagine a long, cold New England winter before the days of electricity. For home heating, your family uses a wood furnace. And as you go out to collect the best tree wood for optimal heating of your home, you consider what trees are the best trees for this kind of burn. It turns out to be oak and hickory. Oak and hickory. But what do oak and hickory have to do with Lent? Stay tuned. Let me first ask, how do we understand and interpret our pain and suffering? Do the wooden beams of the cross of Christ come to mind? In the Gospels, Jesus teaches that we carry our cross daily and follow him. What do our personal crosses look like? And do we sense a shared sense as Americans of the cross of Christ? Given our unique sufferings, I imagine we are more than familiar with personal crosses, be they physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual. Aware of them or not, we also experience collective or societal crosses. Personal or societal, both types are painful and need to be shared with Jesus, and both need to be made of the stuff of oak and hickory. A couple examples in my life where I've encountered physical crosses and mental crosses. In 2013, I had this disease, an upper endoscopy discovered a weakening of my esophagus called achalasia. And the GI doctor botched the endoscopy and perforated my lower esophagus. My body was going septic. I was in excruciating pain. I needed 4-hour life-saving surgery, and not only fixed the perforation, but also gave me a long-term procedure for achalasia. But I would have to pump feed my stomach for over 2 months. I lost a ton of weight. Fortunately, at the time, I was on Medicaid, and many years before that, I also was on food stamps. But then just 3 years later, I saw something funny and felt something in my armpit. I was soon diagnosed with mantle cell lymphoma, a form of blood cancer. And I would be in outpatient and inpatient chemotherapy for about 8 months. 4 weeks in July and August 2017. The third week was so brutal. I had the worst types of chemos. My body was brought to the brink of weakness. My immune system was shot. I lost all my hair. I lost a ton of weight. The nausea was awful. And I wouldn't want this experience in my worst enemy. It taught me a little something about compassion and empathy, as the nurses and the medical staff, the doctors, family and friends were always there for me, comforting me, even on Facebook. It was very comforting. And for years, I've wanted to give back, share some of that compassion in pastoral care in hospitals. But then there were also mental crosses, not just physical. We can suffer from addictive or unhealthy thought patterns. It happened to me when I was a chaplain at Trenton State Penitentiary. It was a maximum security prison. And I would meet with the same men for about 3 years, every 2 to 3 months, Catholic studies. And going into it, I had these nagging thoughts like, am I better than them? Why are they on the inside? They committed awful crimes. But it didn't take too long for me to realize that they knew their guilt. They knew the harm that they had committed, but mostly they knew the compassion of Christ. They're all mercy and forgiveness of Christ. And they shared it with prison guards. They shared it with everybody in the prison. They broke open scriptures to me like I'd never heard before, especially the parable of the Good Samaritan. Our sufferings become crosses to the extent that we develop and deepen our sense of compassion for suffering people, whether it's in prisons or in hospitals or in our own homes. It's a mutuality, an experience of solidarity with people in want of food or shelter or clothing or health care, or want of companionship and conversation. Compassion and empathy are like embers of oak and hickory, which help us face what is particularly brutal and painful. I'm talking about our societal crosses, our shared crosses. Think of the immense weight and confusion of social crosses like extreme polarization and division, the shattering of relationships that follow, that accompany this cultural poison. It strikes in our families, in our neighborhoods, our churches, and across our country. distractions, persistent lies, the glamour of hate, and scapegoating. These are things that hide or suppress awareness of social crosses, the devastating cross that is the assault on children, like in war zones in Gaza or Ukraine. There's tremendous numbers of child amputees and thousands of abductions in Ukraine. In our country, there's also, of course, assaults on our children. It happens through the easy access to weapons of war and the proliferation of mass shootings, or the separation of children from parents during raids. But then there is the extreme widening of the wealth gap. It's a root cause of the high cost of living for so many people. And it's also a root cause for the spread of homelessness, worsening poverty and illness, and domestic abuse. These are all social crosses. We all feel the pain, whether or not we've experienced directly financial stress or strain. We know people who have. And there seems to be no end in sight as to what the forces of greed and power are after. Safety standards and safety nets attacking more and more vulnerable communities, like the elderly, veterans, rural or urban populations. And they're after the God-given goods, like clean air and water and a stable climate. Now, by forces of greed and power, I do not mean rich people, at least not exclusively. For there are some very rich people like Nick Hanauer in Seattle who are giving their all to build an equitable, just, environmentally sound economy with living wages. But I mean, by dark forces, a mindset that can affect all of us, of hyper-individualism and competition. It's the dark side of American thinking that would rationalize, even justify, the exploitation of workers or the scamming of consumers, the fine print, or destruction of our common home. It is our dog-eat-dog capitalist system, after all, and Jesus don't have no business in our corporations or politics. But we know that is a bold-faced lie. The work of transforming injustices is a big part, anywhere, of the resurrection work of Christ. Social crosses, of course, are overwhelming and intensely difficult to get a grasp on, to get a handle around. And they are, of course, not from God, but born of evil. Personal crosses help us develop compassion and empathy. Social crosses lead to another feeling, that of a righteous indignation, a holy anger, primal feelings that can be only tempered by the grace of God. These are intestinal feelings and the stuff of authentic crosses, embers like compassion and empathy of oak and hickory, burning in the furnace of our hearts. But these produce goods, the goods of resurrection, like purified gold or an array of refined metals. That's what burning does. Hope and joy, inclusive, welcoming, diverse community, gorgeous coalitions and movements on the side of human rights and freedoms, economic justice and peacemaking. We encounter the crucified and the risen Lord, not only in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago, or in our rituals. We also feel the burn today while taking notice of crucifixions and resurrections throughout history, particularly in the United States. Can we see how the burn of the slave trade and slavery became the gold of Reconstruction and abolition? Can we see how the burn of treating women and Black people as second-class citizens for the longest time has become the gold of voting rights and civil rights? And can we see how the burn of exploiting nature like an object for all it's worth, poisoning and devastating our oceans and forests, has become the gold of the environmental movement, us loving on God's creation in relationship with nature. In addition to movements and coalitions, we can and ought to find hope and joy in the spirit of heroes for peace and justice in God's kingdom, Christ-like figures like Abraham Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, and Harriet Tubman, or FDR, Nelson Mandela, and today, President Volodymyr Zelensky. And Father Greg Boyle, for 40 years, has been doing amazing, transformative work in Los Angeles. Heartbroken, devastated by gang life and having to bury so many gang members and families and people. He has witnessed the extraordinary miracles happening in families and communities of former gang members by starting Homeboy Industries. Please look it up. It's an amazing organization, Homeboy Industries. This Lent, let us pay close attention to our thoughts and feelings, asking God to help us identify our personal and shared sufferings, our crosses in Christ. As we enter more deeply this period of purification, from what shall we fast? Fasting from television and the internet can help us feel the burn. Lifting up our prejudices, our biases, and judgmental thought patterns, sharing it all with the Lord, reading on praying on the Gospels and holy literature as if for the first time, can help us feel the burn. And pray that we all discover courage and strength, the courage to build God's kingdom of healing and reconciliation and unity at every level of relationship, of course with our family members and our neighbors and our friends, and at the level of economics and civic life. Wishing everyone a very blessed Lent, Holy Week, and Easter season. Feel the burn.